margin for error as a UFC heavyweight is next to none. That's exactly why the belt holder in MMA's ultimate proving ground has a rightful claim as the baddest man on the planet. And at UFC 252, Stipe Miocic and Daniel Cormier will forever settle the score. At UFC 226, Cormier shocked the world and became a double champ. At UFC 241, Anaheim, California continued to be a house of horror for Cormier as Miocic regained his belt. At the Apex Center in Sin City, absent from fans, this epic trilogy will reach its threshold.
My legacy matters to me. And if I don't prepare with the idea that this fight defines who I am remembered as when I leave mixed martial arts, it will not allow me to leave no stone unturned. So I've prepared as if this will define me.
Will DC avoid a phone booth style of fight and rely on his wrestling roots? Can Stipe's game plan of going to the body be replicated one more time? These questions will be answered at UFC 252, and most importantly, the debate will be settled on who is the greatest heavyweight to ever grace the octagon.
Let's go. Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier 3 has been highly anticipated since Miocic knocked out Cormier to earn his UFC heavyweight title at UFC 241 last August. MMA fans going to be treated to the epic conclusion of this trilogy Saturday night at UFC 252. Cormier won the first fight between the two men in 2018. Now he's looking to win the last and final fight between the two heavyweight greats. And this could be the last fight for Cormier. Here's what he said when he was asked about what a win would mean for his legacy.
I think it puts you right alongside the greatest sports athletes of all time. Michael Jordan won with the Bulls when they beat the Jazz. Unfortunately, he came back. I won't come back. Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl in his last season. It would put me in that type of sphere with some of the greatest athletes that have ever competed across any sport. So when I win on Saturday, I will retire in that way.
We shall see. Cormier, a former two-division champion whose only career losses in the UFC have come to light heavyweight title holder Jon Jones and Miocic. Saturday's main event, a virtual pick-em here. As we take a look at the main card. In the co-main event, a big-time bout in the stacked bantamweight division. Sugar Sean O'Malley against Marlon Chito Vera. O'Malley, a heavy favorite. He owns a perfect 12-0 record, including 8 knockouts. Let's pack a punch. Welcome our heavy hitters, UFC Hall of Famer Rashad Evans and CBS Sports combat analyst and host of the State of Combat podcast, Brian Campbell. I am pumped for this main event. My guy, Cleveland's own Stipe Miocic, looking to defend his heavyweight title against Daniel Cormier. And BC, I listened to your entire interview with Cormier on the podcast. His legacy is very important to me. He spoke about that at length. What would a win mean for him?
Well, first of all, shout out to DC for looking like a prime Suge Knight during that press conference. Will he employ, though, such a cutthroat style in the cage? It's going to have to remains to be seen. But what's at stake can't be avoided here. I've gone as far as saying this is the most prestigious fight in UFC history, maybe the biggest from the standpoint of what's at stake, and specifically for DC, winning back that heavyweight title, retiring on his own terms with a W, maybe capping off the greatest trilogy UFC has ever seen with a win. And how about winning the battle of each other against Stipe, claiming himself to be the greatest heavyweight of all time? But wait, there's more. You could really make the case that with a win here, DC could walk away from this sport in that short conversation of the guys who have a place in the greatest of all time debate. Heavy, heavy stakes for a man in DC who admitted he wasn't at his best in that rematch. It's his fault. He wasn't in the shape he wanted to. He maybe didn't have the right game plan that he should have. He'll get one more chance to clean up. You talk about, wow, resumes here, 2 surefire Hall of Famers. It does not get bigger and better than this.
All right, BC, so we know that Daniel Cormier is very, very focused on his legacy, but he also likes money. Let's say he wins this fight. You're telling me that Uncle Dana says, hey, I'm going to pay you a bunch of money. We're going to get this Jon Jones fight. I mean, he's saying he's going to retire after this fight. Do you actually believe him?
I don't. And I only think he comes back for one name, and it's Jon Jones that you mentioned. It would help the idea of DC coming back if he can win emphatically in this third fight against Stipe, if he exits without a ton of damage and with a ton of confidence rebuilt. Look, I said Stipe, DC 3, maybe the most prestigious fight in UFC history. How about DC Jones 3 if Jon moved up to heavyweight? I don't believe Daniel, whose own coach Javier Mendez said this week, my guy loves money too much not to answer the door when Uncle Dana comes knocking with that Briggs truck and John Jones in the passenger seat. He's got to get through Stipe first, though, people. Not an easy task.
Yeah, indeed. Rashad, Cormier admitted he cut corners in their second fight. Didn't have the cardio. What makes you believe he has the cardio this time around against Miocic?
Well, because he went to the places where you go to when you need to have the cardio. You know, you go to that dark place when you need to have the cardio, and you don't cut any corners when you feel injured. You keep on going and you push through, and that's what he said happened last time. Whenever he felt a little bruised, whenever he felt himself a little bit banged up, he gave himself the time off, and that's when you got to push. That's when you got to keep it going, but you got to be smart about it. You know, he's an older guy, so he can't push himself too hard or he wouldn't make the date, but at the same time, he knows that he has to get this fight in shape to where he needs to be, and that's being able to hold Stipe down, wrestle him, and then come back up and play the striking game. The last fight, he did take Stipe down, and he worked his magic on the ground, but then the next round, he let Stipe up, and that's when Stipe got creative with the hands and with those body shots to end the night for DC.
BC, this time around, what's the path to victory for Stipe?
I think it comes down to distance. Obviously, his takedown defense, which he did show well at times in this rivalry, will be a big part. But he can't get into the clinch battle against DC, who's stronger in those moments, a better infighter. Look at the size difference between these two in terms of height and reach when they do go nose to nose. Stipe's better when he's on the outside with that jab. He has certain intangibles, the champion does, that has allowed him to get this far. An incredible chin, a will to come back and make adjustments, heart, all of those things, and better stamina than DC historically. He's got to get this fight into those later rounds to have a chance to expose Cormier. And like that second fight, should DC make a mistake, Stipe can counter. He can get in there. He found a path to victory by going to the body. This time around, I think you're going to see a more technical affair between the two. Stipe's going to have to show us plans B, C, and D to be able to counteract what Cormier does.
Yeah, absolutely, BC. One thing that he's going to have to do is he's going to have to make sure that he answers DC's left hand. DC has a very slick left hand because what he does is he jabs, and as he jabs, he paws for the back of the neck. And when he paws for the back of the neck, he pulls Stipe into a clinch position. From the clinch position, that's where DC is home because that's when he's inside close where he can fight in the phone booth, and that's where he caught Stipe with that big knockout. So Stipe is going to have to, when DC goes for that clinch, slip a knee inside or slip a body shot inside. But all the time when DC's reaching for that clinch, drop a knee into the body, drop a punch into the body. Those punches, those shots will land, and those will hurt DC, and it'll pay off big dividends later on in the fight when you need to fade a DC out who does get tired no matter what.